Well, my friend and Unitarian Universalist musician Mimi Bornstein wrote that song at a time of deep despair in her life when her heart was broken. Finding herself alone at the piano, she wrote a song that invited both spirit and those around her to join in the struggle and to feel her pain. More, the song calls forth a need for comfort and hope in the face of all that gets in our way. Well, humans are interesting creatures. We are, most of us, born with a capacity to be both creative and stubborn, loving and spiteful, committed and fickle. Though we come into this world with DNA that shapes who we will become, we can't predict how our life will unfold. What we can presume, however, is that most of us will face loss, challenge, and struggle as we move through our lives. Rarely do we reach adulthood without something difficult getting in our way. And I don't know a soul who reaches midlife and beyond, as many of us in this room have, without having to make hard choices, without having to face real struggle, without knowing loss and grief. I mean, you heard all of the pain in the room just moments ago. Well, I think it may be one of the reasons why my friend, the late Unitarian Universalist theologian Forrest Church, called humans homo religiosus, the religious human. We seem to be hardwired to find meaning in life's struggle, perhaps because we can't ever escape struggle. Now, your church has chosen perseverance as its theme for this month, as have many Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist churches across the globe. And I was really excited to think about reflecting on this topic. When Marcus told me about it, that this was going to be the theme for this month, I thought of a word that my high school teacher taught me. She called it stick-to-itiveness. Did any of your high school teachers teach you that word? Yeah, some other ones did too. Well, I like that word. I particularly liked it back then, perhaps because I'm good at sticking to things, right? I seem to be born with a natural tendency to make good on my commitments, perhaps stemming from an inborn inclination to follow rules, rather unusual in a Unitarian. But stick-to-itiveness, as important a quality as it may be, is not quite the same as perseverance. For perseverance means, at least according to one dictionary, a steady persistence in a course of action, especially in spite of difficulties, obstacles, or discouragement. Its root is related to the word severe, persevere, and suggests the art of moving through a severe or challenging time with resilience. Well, we do indeed live in challenging times. There are so many issues that face us in Canada and the United States, around the globe, from climate change to greed to unethical politicians to police violence to rooting out invasive species in our forests. I mean, challenges are everywhere, both political and personal. How do we find the spiritual strength to persevere in spite of all that stands in our way? Well, I've thought about this a lot, perhaps because so many of us do need to find ways to make it through the hard times that afflict us, because hard times are here for most of us. Whether it's powerfully personal, such as struggling to find a job, dealing with aging parents, finding a way out of a difficult relationship, or discovering the strength to face ill health. Or those big global issues of immigration, politics, climate change. Hard times are here. We have to persevere in the face of them. But how in the world do we do that? Well, one source I've turned to is the author and teacher Margaret J. Wheatley. She's been profiled in Yes Magazine, written a number of books, and co-founded the Berkana Institute. And she also published a little book in 2010 whose title is the same as your monthly theme, Perseverance. And in it, she seeks to help people like us who are facing challenges but really want to make a difference in the world to find the spiritual strength to carry on. And Jaco is going to be the voice of Meg Wheatley today. So just note that everything he reads is from her book. And she begins the book with an interesting piece given to her by a Hopi elder. And though Wheatley wrote it in poetic form, it carries the primary message of those elders, imagining us all in the stream of life with its currents and eddies.
To my fellow swimmers, here is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold onto the shore. They are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water.
And this is a different way of looking at perseverance, isn't it? The elders are saying not to hold on to what we already have, but to let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water. I think people often misinterpret perseverance to mean just hanging on to what is. And of course, there are times when this is the best way to persevere. Any of us who have been in a long-term relationship know that there are moments when we simply have to hang on to our partner because we've made a commitment to do so. That means that even in the midst of the inevitable struggles and challenges of these relationships, we hang on in order to work things through and come out on the other side with a deeper and stronger commitment. But sometimes the act of persevering invites us to make changes and to let go of old patterns. In her book, Meg Wheatley has this to say about it.
When things aren't going well, when the results we need are not materializing, it's time to be different. It's time to choose a new response. We don't have to choose a better response. It just needs to be different. We don't do things differently to upset people. Changing our behavior is how we discover we have a choice.
And then she writes this about choice.
Perseverance is a choice. It's not a simple one-time choice. It's a daily choice. There is never a final decision.
There is never a final decision. That may be the essence of spiritually pursuing the strength of perseverance. Rather than the stick-to-itiveness I learned in high school, it's more of a willingness to keep trying, to keep swimming, as it were, even though we may face challenges along the way. Now, how does this translate into real life? Let's return briefly to the story of Joseph Shabalala that I told the children today. Ending apartheid is a wonderful example of this kind of perseverance. Now, you may recall, if you were old enough, that apartheid was the law in South Africa for a very long time, and the resistance to it was mostly underground, except in small pockets here and there. But something changed when people began to imagine new ways of resisting, including the divestment movement that took place in the States and elsewhere. In South Africa, blacks there used music, among other things, to protest in quiet but real ways. But South African white leaders still resisted, not believing that the divestment program or black resistance would last. Here's where our story gets interesting. American songwriter Paul Simon in defiance of what was in reality a boycott of South Africa, chose instead to go into the country against the advice of many white liberals to make music with the black musicians who were both the victims and the survivors of apartheid. For Joseph Shabalala to work with Paul Simon was powerfully risky. And it's true that many of his family members were killed in the apartheid struggle, and he was almost unable to return to his country when he was kicked out, Tula Klezeo Nala Pasakaya. But because he and Paul Simon were willing to try different ways of persevering, working with others who also broke the rules, the change they were working for actually happened. Though things are not perfect by any means in South Africa, apartheid ended, not in small part due to the efforts of those who didn't simply stay the course, but rather kept their heads above water as they pushed off from the shore, swimming toward their goal, finding a new direction when it was needed, and staying the course when it was not. Perseverance is a choice, and there is freedom in making it. But it also requires of us patience and a willingness, perhaps even a necessity, to take breaks from the hard work required of us to make a difference in our world. Meg Wheatley has a good way of approaching this. She writes,
"Having to make a choice to persevere every day keeps us alert and present. Do I have the resources, internal and external, to keep going? Can I deal with what's in front of me right now? Do I have any patience left? Is there any way through this mess?" These critical questions require a momentary pause, a little reflection time. Rather than striking out or being reactive to a bad day, we offer ourselves freedom. Do I continue or give up? Well, even a brief pause creates the space for freedom.
And one way to give ourselves such a pause is to use meditation, prayer, or music. So let's take a pause in the middle of this sermon. I make a lousy Buddhist. I am a lousy Buddhist. I am too inclined to have a monkey mind, and I can never get comfortable sitting still. Perhaps because I'm such a lousy Buddhist, I find it important to occasionally take part in Buddhist practice. And the song we just sang is very beautiful and meaningful to me. It reminds all of us to offer to ourselves and to those around us a blessing of stillness and loving kindness. Learning to be peaceful and at ease is hard, yet terribly important. It's particularly important for Unitarian Universalists. I think one of our greatest challenges as a religion is our tendency to rush around, moving from one idea to another, from one belief to another, even from one church to another. There is an old, and I think really terrible joke about Unitarians, that we're simply a way station on the way from the Methodist to the golf course. You've heard that one, haven't you? Well, I don't like that joke, but there's a seed of truth in it. While I want to honor those among us, including me and Jaco, who are homebred Unitarians, it is true that as a faith community, we are, for the most part, a collection of people who have traveled from somewhere else religiously to where we are today. And that's not all bad. As I mentioned earlier, having the sense to change course in midstream is one element of an important kind of perseverance. And being eager to try new things and discover new ways of doing religion can be powerful. But it has its shadow side. In that little book I've grown to love, Meg Wheatley has a short essay that struck me more than anything else she wrote. Hear what she has to teach us.
It's hard to find fault with eagerness. It seems like such a good thing. People motivated and eager to get to work, to take on a project, to change their lives. But not too far down the road, eagerness can show its ugly side. People may become so committed to their cause or their work that they become missionaries. They want everyone to work on this particular issue, or do this diet, or follow this plan that will change your life. People can also let their commitment to being of service grow into exaggerated heroism. They're willing to take on any problem you give them. They keep looking for the next great cause. They seem unstoppable in their motivation and energy. Bring it on is their life slogan. Such people are like supernovas, great clouds of fiery burning gases that appear powerful and beautiful, but are actually already dead. They've exhausted their energy, supernovas, blown themselves up, and what we are observing in the night sky is just their last gaseous remains.
Ouch. I think I love this little essay because it rings so true. I know so many people, particularly within our faith communities, who are like this. I've watched in every church I've ever served as people get excited by the potential within a Unitarian congregation to make a difference on an issue they care about, then get disillusioned when not everyone can meet them at the supernova level. Far too often, these people leave the church angry that they can't convert everyone to their cause. And sadly, they often will even leave off their support for their beloved issue because they get burned out, tired, and frustrated when their eagerness for the idea or issue doesn't catch everyone on fire, when they don't make the huge difference they were so sure they could. Hear how Meg Wheatley responds to this.
Eagerness is a good place to start, but its propensity for unfettered growth requires vigilance. Like a parasite, it tends to kill off its host. It's not a bad thing when our eagerness fades and we find ourselves just doing the work, bored at times, motivated at other times, working day to day on little tasks, hoping that some of what we're doing is useful, but not really sure. It's good not to be a supernova.
It's good not to be a supernova. I always thought supernovas were the people to emulate. My father was one, and he did some amazing work for social justice in his day. So did many other Unitarians I admire. But sadly, my father died young, burned out from trying to save the world all on his own. Other people I know like this became disillusioned and lost the will to persevere. They gave up or burned out, not because the work was unimportant, but because they couldn't figure out how to keep their heads above water when the going got rough. But you know what? There is power in what Wheatley has to say about perseverance. I love how she acknowledges that sometimes the work is boring. That we can't always know if what we're doing is useful or right. That part of having spiritual strength means staying with something even when we're not always sure if things will work out. There's so much that needs our commitment, our love, and our energy. There's so many really big challenges facing us today. It will take a lot of work to make a difference. It will take a lot of people, as a song that we like to sing reminds us, to turn the world around. But it will also take patience and a willingness to persevere even when giving up might seem the better choice. Now, Margaret Wheatley challenges people like us to stay in the river, to swim at times, tread water at others, and occasionally take breaks on the shore. She knows that perseverance requires us to do the best we can and to help others as well. Listen to her wise words one more time.
It can take many years to discover clarity, how to withstand life's challenges, how to stay in the river. Instead of struggling or avoiding difficulties, we become people who know they can hold their ground, even as the currents intensify and threaten to drag us under. We learn to sink our feet into the mud ever more deeply, because we know that more challenges are coming. Once we've experienced life in all its dimensions, good, bad, hard, easy, life doesn't seem so challenging. Every situation is what it is, sometimes lovely, sometimes difficult. Every situation is workable. We're fully in the river, and we're learning how to keep our heads above water.
The spiritual strength of perseverance places in us the ability to fully live, It's not hanging on for dear life, sticking to familiar ways and avoiding change. Rather, to persevere is to trust that we have the capacity to do the work of building a better world without burning ourselves out. Now, each of us will find the small and large ways that we can impact the world around us. Perhaps it's in your parenting or grandparenting of kids who grow up loving themselves and others. Perhaps it's in the ways you live lightly on our planet. Perhaps it's in the art or the music you create or the buildings you design or the software you develop. Each of us can discover the spiritual strengths to live in this challenging world without burning out like a supernova. I hope that the spiritual practice of coming to church here week after week sustains you in your work and your life. There are times when I wonder if it makes any difference what we do here, if this thing that we call a church even matters anymore. Like Meg Wheatley writes, I, like many of you, occasionally find myself just doing the work, bored at times, motivated at others, working day to day on little tasks, hoping that some of what I'm doing is useful, but not really sure. But I keep doing it because I believe that the religious communities we create together gives me, and I hope you, strength to persevere. Being with each other week after week reminds me that we're all swimming in the same direction, trying to build a world where unity and love prevail. I'm not sure how to get there. I'm not even sure if I know where we're going. But together with others at my side, I find the spiritual strength to make the journey. And I hope you do too. Well, with our heads above water and our spirits strong,
We are going. Heaven knows where we are going.
but we are going to at least make a difference in our small corner of the world.
We will face challenges, and it will be hard, we know.
But if we walk together in unity and love,
Comforting and caring for each other and our amazing earth.
we will keep our heads above water and persevere. Blessings upon all of you as you walk a path of joy and beauty and love. May you always be filled with loving kindness, and may you care for this earth and for each other and persevere. Amen, and bless and peace. Go in peace, my friends.